Good morning, everyone. This is the, what's today? Thursday, April. August. All right, I'm already in August. April 7th meeting of the Board of Architects and Engineers Examiners. We are starting this morning off with committee meetings, beginning with the Engineers Committee. So we'll get a call to order from the chairman. We'll take a quick roll call and then go right into applications for review. Mr. Barrick?
Okay, we will come to order, and Michael, will you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barrick?
Here.
Mr. Bursai?
Here.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Heathcote?
I'm right here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Everyone present and accounted for. Mr. Campbell has joined virtually, but the physical quorum is present. So, let's see, where do we want to start here? First application for review. Oh. Gogoi? G-O-G-O-I? Who was it that reviewed him? Bursai? Sorry.
That's okay.
All right, you want to lead us off with that one, Mr. Bursai?
Sure. And I don't know who else reviewed him, but the degree was not equivalent to ABET EAC, and using our general education spreadsheet, the humanities and social science deficiencies can be satisfied that way just based on, let me look, I think it was maybe citizen, maybe advanced degree, practice in the U.S., I believe. So the deficiencies in humanities and social sciences can be made up. The math and science deficiency was, let me look, I think it was 4 hours. So, yeah, math and science needed to be 32 hours, and it was 28.3. And looking at it, I don't remember seeing one like this. There were 4 math classes that were, calculus, differential equations that are pretty typical. There were 2 physics classes that were calculus-based. There were 2 chemistries. A geology and an engineering mechanics, and it seemed like all the courses were there, that some of these were, instead of 3-hour courses, were 2.9-hour courses or 2.3-hour courses. So I didn't know how different those would be from a 3-hour course, but it was close. This applicant has 32 years of experience. That seems good, and has been licensed in several other states. So I just don't remember an applicant like this where the courses seem to be there, but a little less than 3 hours credit. And I wanted to know kind of what the other reviewer thought and what the other committee members thought about it. I just wanted some input.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate that.
You're more than welcome.
I think given in previous reviews where we had individuals who were licensed in other states and who may have lacked a few items, when I say a few, this one was very few, but that has demonstrated their ability to practice engineering competently for decades. In the past, we've acknowledged their ability to practice, and I'm assuming that based on the deficiencies, it hasn't really impacted the particular practice that he's in. So my recommendation would be that we consider him for licensure, approve him for licensure.
Could I ask,
We do have precedent for that.
yeah, considering myself still the new guy, it wouldn't hurt some to, I have looked at these, and I don't know if I reviewed this one or not and approved it or not. Maybe you can tell me.
I believe Megan is on. She might be able to let us know who the other person is, if it in fact it is you. I only see Mr. Bursai's comments here, so I don't have the second review.
Yeah, I would have signed a separate sheet if I did it. It doesn't pop into my head, but
Okay.
when I look at these that have, when it says sub-equivalent, what I hear in my head is, okay, it's not ABET accredited, but somebody has looked at it and it's close enough. And I go on from there. When it shows missing hours and stuff like that, I start going to how long have they practiced it, and how many states are they registered in, and those types of things to make a judgment. But I'm just kind of doing this based on what I think you all have done in the past, and it wouldn't hurt me at all to hear from senior members. How do you what determination do you make? What are mitigating circumstances that says this is okay or this is not okay? Because I'm just kind of feeling my way along from the conversations that I've heard in the last year.
Yeah, I can address that with what I have taken in over the years. That we have some latitude when we look at the educational record. I mean, we've got the comparison by NCEES that can be done, or for applicants that are in our country, we can get Dr. Smith to review and give us. Those reviews give us kind of a hard line. You're this many hours short in this area,
Right.
Because in each area there's a specific number of hours, and they've looked at the courses and know the programs enough to know whether there's some calculus courses that are not equal to others. There's some that are engineering grade and others that are not, and so forth. So these reviewers know that well enough, so they give us a bottom line. You're 3 hours short here, or this meets, 8-bet EAC equivalency. It either does or it doesn't, so it doesn't make a decision for us. What I've seen us do is for an applicant who's brand new, wants to take the test, we look at that a little differently than somebody who's got 20 or 30 years of experience.
You're registered in 6 states.
And registered in other states, and somebody that we can make more of a educated opinion that this person would be a good engineer to practice in Tennessee, without just throwing out our laws and rules. If somebody's 28 hours short, then we might say, well, that this person, is too far away from having an engineering degree. But so we've got some latitude there, and I've seen us approve more often than not. It's a shortage in humanities that we might forgive, but also in these maths and sciences, sometimes somebody has been short of biology. You have to have 2 sciences, biology and chemistry, and physics, I guess, among the options. And sometimes people are short a science class, and we figured, well, if they're a structural engineer, that's really not having an impact on what they're doing. We're able to have those kind of discussions, so we haven't exactly had to follow what the comparison outcome has been. So this was the case here where it seemed like the classes were there, the credits were just a little short of 3, which I just don't remember that in the past, but it seemed like the combination of all the courses being there and the years of experience, and this person was licensed in a bunch of other states and has an advanced degree too. That's another thing that makes a difference in my mind when they have an advanced degree in engineering. It's hard for me to think of.
It seems we have a lot of applicants that have a foreign degree, but they have a master's somewhere in the U.S.
Correct.
And that tends to make me feel like this is okay. And,
yeah.
I'm not, and again, I'm just asking the question of, is that the way historically we've
Yes.
looked at that?
Yeah, so I think we do have some latitude there, and I have, when I review these, if I feel like I've heard our discussions before, I'll go ahead and approve. This is one I don't quite remember us having the discussion on, so I wanted to just hear what everybody thought. And also, I mean, I guess it may not matter that much if the other reviewer did not approve this person, but if they did, it would make a difference because you need 2 approvals.
Thanks. That helps.
Before I make a final recommendation, which I already have, Robert, did you review this? Did you have a chance to look at it?
Yeah, Alton, I don't recall reviewing this. Maybe I did, but I'll kind of echo. And Rob, it's a good question, and Ricky, bringing it to the committee may be a good thing to do when we have technical education questions, because really it is a judgment thing, and we need to make sure that we're all on board with that judgment. This applicant looks very approvable to me because 32 years of experience, doesn't have any real violations or anything. And it is kind of goofy how they've counted his class hours that bring him up a little bit short. But I think we're well within our rights to approve this candidate. Again, if it'd been somebody that had 6 years of experience and not been licensed, maybe in one other state, maybe we'd like to see a little bit more solution to the technical aspects. But this guy looks good to me.
I'll go back to my original recommendation that we approve this applicant.
Got a motion and a second. Is that the kind of thing we need to do here? Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. If no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, like sign. We're approved.
Michael, I assume I'll need to fill out a sheet and get it to Megan, the signature sheet,
Yeah, we'll get you.
unless you have one here for me today.
I don't have one here for you, but we'll get you what you need.
Okay.
And we could, I mean, by the time the day's over, we could potentially print something out and just have you sign it. But we'll get that taken care of. You've got a second one. You want to, Mr. Stegner is the name?
Yes. I'll go ahead if you want.
At the, Mr. Chairman, that's all right with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. For a refresher, it's your note says does not have 4 years experience after qualifying. I think it says qualifying degree.
It is. This one, again, has a little different twist than I remember coming before us before. So since I don't remember having the discussion on this, that's why I wanted to bring it to the committee. This person is registered in other states to Colorado and looks like Massachusetts. They have a master's degree in physics from 2004, so it looked like originally they had a science degree. Let's see.
It looks like they got a master's in engineering before their bachelor's in engineering.
Yeah, they got it right.
Is that
So,
right?
okay, so they got a bachelor's in physics, graduated in 2004. Got a master's in civil engineering, graduated in 2009, which those two things wouldn't qualify just yet. Close, but to having legislation passed, but not yet. And then they've got their bachelor's degree in engineering, which is what right now our laws call for, with graduation December 2021. And the other thing that's pretty clear and specific in our rules is the qualifying experience shall occur after the qualifying degree. In this case, the qualifying degree is in 2021, so there hadn't been time to have 4 years of qualifying experience post qualifying degree. This is kind of a different case in that, one, it's a comedy application. So sometimes our order of things in terms of decoupling doesn't apply to comedy, and so this could be similar. The other thing is that this person's got 11 years of experience under a licensed engineer, 12 and a half total years of experience, and is licensed in 2 other states. So again, this person looks like a good candidate to practice engineering in Tennessee. They don't fit our rules in a way that I remember, so I wanted to hear discussion from other people, what they thought about this applicant.
Well,
I
go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say, I think it depends on if legal tells us that the comedy, for a comedy application, we don't have to adhere to the ordering of the experience.
Yeah,
That's what it would vary with, I think. So
I agree with that.
Tony might need to help us with that. I recall that
remember-
it doesn't matter with comedy, but I'm not positive.
Have we had? I don't remember that we've had a case like this before. And it's not to say that we have not. I just don't remember us having one.
I didn't remember one. So
Okay.
We had one similar, guys, with the guy that worked for Harold Cannon, where we did that. You can have some experience while working for somebody before you get your degree.
the difference with him, though, is he was not a PE, where this person already is a PE
Correct.
in other states.
You're right.
And that's where we limited how much experience bachelor's degree would be limited to 1 year total. You'd need to have
Right.
worked
You're right.
3 years to earn one. So even if we applied the Harold Cannon rule here, would only get 1 year of experience extra. So this has some. It's a little similar because it's out of order, but it has some differences here.
Tony, can you give us an opinion?
I may need a few minutes.
Okay.
But I'm looking at it. I think what I'm looking at is comedy application review policy that they created for engineers that does maintain that they have to have 4 years of a progressive experience pursuant to Rule 121.10.2. 21.10.2 doesn't talk about the order of it. It basically talks about the qualifications of the 4 years of experience. But then the statute for reciprocity, which is actually called reciprocity, not comity, indicates that somebody who has license in another state must the applicant's qualifications meet the requirements of this chapter, the law, and the rules established by the board, which makes me tend to think that they would have to have it in the correct order. And it doesn't allow for decoupling for comedy. I think this has come up before, but I'm not sure that I know of anything out there that allows us to not review it in that manner. Because I think we've run across this before when it says to meet the requirements of this chapter and the rules established by the board, and that requires the experienced to be in an order not in which has been submitted today.
Can I make a recommendation?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Steve.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to point out to Rob that, you know, in your question on the previous application, this is what we get into a lot, where we might think that this applicant is in good shape, but we have to lean on legal to tell us if we have that flexibility.
Yeah, and that was my follow-up question. With what you just said, my question is, do we have the authority to approve this person, or is the law written in such a place that we don't have the authority to do anything at all? We can feel however we want to, but we're done.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, that's the general gist of it. Is that legal tries to get you all where you would like to go as a group, but we'll tell you where the lines of the statutory and rule requirements are. Now, this
Yeah, I can under you all have options here, right?
That's my question. Do we have an option?
Well, there's a schedule that's going on right up there today, which is taking up some.
You want to wait till
the
day's over and then make a decision?
No, but you can defer.
That's what my recommendation is going to be: is that we advise the applicant to reapply at the next for the next board meeting.
They wouldn't have to reapply. We could just hold this and take it up again. You can table the discussion until the next meeting,
or until that actually becomes law. I don't know how long.
Well, like I said, it's up for debate, so you can take that under consideration. But any decision you make today will be made under current law and will be binding.
What's the timing if it passes both houses today? How long before it could be signed?
Could we, to simplify things, could we say, take the action today that we would approve this person if the law change that is under consideration today is passed?
You can.
And then we're done.
You can do that.
And if it's not passed, then we're still done because we can't do anything about it anyway.
That's correct.
There's a timing issue probably for this individual. The reason he's asked for a comity or reciprocity license in Tennessee is he's probably got something that he needs to seal a drawing on fairly quickly. So pending the outcome of the legislation, I'll go back to the question to Tony or you, I guess, Michael. When will this officially become law where we can actually act on it?
That I don't have the answer to. My understanding...
The governor has to sign it.
Yes, the governor would have to sign it for it to become enacted. And that could happen whenever. I don't know when that would happen. It could happen within a couple of days, or it could happen, in a month.
So if we...
And then a lot of times those things don't become effective until like July 1 or something, too.
No, this one would, I believe this one would go immediately, effective upon signature.
Okay.
So would Rob's recommended proposal be correct, that we approve this contingent on the legislation being adopted and the governor's signature on the law?
I think that's the best decision because it covers both. It covers the possibility of the bill's passage, in which case we have the ability, upon your agreement, we would have the ability to then get in touch with this person and process the rest of their application.
Right, but this person doesn't need to seal any drawings or submit them anywhere in this state with a seal on it until that bill is signed into law.
Correct.
Okay, we need to make that clear to him, him.
Well, I mean, if again, current law is current law.
So no, I'm just saying, I mean, if we send him a notification that he's approved contingent on X,
we won't be doing that. We'll be approving him after or not at all. But we won't be saying to the applicant that it's contingent upon anything, because at this point we can't say with 100% certainty that anything's going to happen.
So what would your language to this applicant be?
Silence.
Well, my language would be that, yes, we wouldn't say anything further than we've already said.
So in essence, will we take action today?
That's up to you.
Well, we've got a recommendation. Do you want to put that in the form of a motion, Rob?
Yeah, I would move that we accept this application contingent on the law change that we have recommended to the legislature being passed.
Is that a viable motion?
It's fine with me, and I believe
Tony?
Yeah, Tony says it's okay.
Then I second.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign. I don't want to burn a lot of time here, but something just got said that while we're educating me, the difference between reciprocity and comedy legally.
None. There's none.
Sorry.
None. No,
None.
it's just
Okay,
a different.
thank
It's
you.
just a different.
I thought I heard you say something that they were
sorry.
different.
In the statute, it says reciprocity. In the rules, it says comedy.
They're the same.
It's the same.
Okay, I feel better now.
It's the same. It's just different ways. I've wondered that before for years, and I just remember that it's just called something different.
I'm glad somebody else was wondering that, because you just stirred something up for me.
No,
yes, Ricky.
It makes you feel better. I'd never heard the term until I started working with you all. So.
Comedy. I have to explain what comedy does not mean. Comedy club. And mean. Oh wait.
All right, so I'm going to clarify something real quick after this brief sidebar with Tony. The bill would be effective July 1. If the bill passes today and goes to the governor for signature, that's when it would become effective. We would communicate to the applicant that we're in process, but that's the last step that has to happen. So in the meantime, they're not licensed to have any stamping activity or authority in the state of Tennessee until that date.
Good. So we will communicate that to the applicant.
Yes, we would have to.
I think that's important.
We would have to. Yep.
I've got a comment, but I wanted Tony to weigh in on. So and this doesn't have anything to do with the motion now, that's set in place, but the idea about comedy having to follow the order of our rules and laws versus a applicant for the PE test. Regarding decoupling, this has changed since I've been on the board a couple of times. When I first got on the board, it was ruled by the board attorney that, and maybe the department, that even though our rule says you have to have 4 years of experience before you can take the PE. The interpretation was for a comedy applicant, it's okay not to follow that order, because a Kentucky PE who took the PE test after only 1 year or 2 years of experience and then got their license was somehow judged to be different, did not have to follow that order that's stated in our rules, despite what you just read. And I read exactly what you've read. I'm not a lawyer, but we have to do the best we can reading the rules. where it said exactly what you said, shall meet all the requirements of, the rule. Then somewhere in the middle of my experience, the interpretation was no, we cannot accept a comedy applicant who didn't follow that order. And so we couldn't accept somebody from Kentucky. Then recently we had Maria look into it because it was, again, a question, I think, that kind of followed our ACEC talk this year. And we did get the ruling again, or the interpretation, I should say, that a comedy applicant did not have to follow that timing rule of 4 years of experience. So somehow, I think if somebody was able to make that interpretation of the law, could that same whatever reasoning was, and I know you only had 2 minutes to look at it, Tony, this morning, could that same reasoning apply to something like this where the experience has been out of order for a comedy applicant, and that isn't anything that we need to answer this morning because we've got already a vote and something, an issue here, but just for the future, I just wonder how that interpretation was made for decoupling and whether it would really apply here too.
Right. Yeah. So, the experience that I've had with this board and with many boards is that I always recommend that if the board wants an interpretation that they want something to be lasting, to request it, and we can provide it on a memorandum in writing, and that the board maintain that memo.
Okay.
Without a memo, it's extremely difficult for me to evaluate what legal reasoning somebody used in order to come to that interpretation.
Okay.
Sometimes, and I don't think it probably applies here, but sometimes the law does change years ago, from one to another, or a rule may have changed or whatnot. So,
that's a good point.
To that extent. So I'm not sure if that has come up. I know
right.
that we've had some positive changes over the years that would make it a little bit easier to get licensed. But one of the things that I think about when I read those statutes is whether the board under the law would be treating people the same, whether it be a Tennessee applicant or a Kentucky applicant, because I think we've had discussion in the past. Why would anybody want to get licensed in the state of Tennessee first if they could just go get licensed in other states such as Kentucky and then come to Tennessee and get licensed almost immediately, right? And so they just circumvent the statutes and rules of the state of Tennessee. So it seemed like it would be a chilling effect for anybody to want to be licensed in Tennessee. So that's kind of what one of my thoughts was, is that if we went with that interpretation, then we just create this we create the reason to have a loophole, or just to kind of go around that because of that interpretation. So, but then again, it would make it easier for people to come into Tennessee,
correct,
who are already licensed, which is something that is always a positive effect, I think. So, but I do get concerned about whether or not we're treating people similar, in the whole idea of treating people similar. When it comes to their right to be employed, we get into certain constitutional foundations, which I try to avoid as much as possible to answer those on a whim. But I think that this discussion may just in another month or less be moot.
Yeah, I think
it may be a lot easier on.
Well, it would. Yeah, I agree, and I totally understand your reasoning. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to add a decoupling to our laws, so that we didn't have this Kentucky turnaround to avoid our rule. But I will say I personally brought this up in either this fall, I think. I don't know whether it was the August meeting or October or December. And so I know I have some notes on it, and got a ruling from Maria. She looked into it and said, no, for comedy applications, we accept applicants from Kentucky who didn't do it in our order, but I don't remember whether we got a memo done or not. But I can definitely see where that would be the right thing to do, is to get a memo. But you're right, we may not need such a thing, depending. So
I think, yes, absolutely. I think we had talked about that if this came, that we could avoid that
Yeah.
that concern altogether, which I think would be great.
Okay.
And no, and so into the memo issue, that's usually something that I mean, for the attorneys that are in my group, is try to push, pro memorandum if they want it to be, long term. There is always the issue that we run into if we do a memorandum. Usually in the board meetings, they say, well, what about this scenario then? Well, then
Right.
that takes a whole new, then we have to amend it. So I'm not really sure if we're being helpful at that point in time, is that it's more form over substance at that point in time. So I apologize if that's created some confusion over the years, but
Thanks.
if you have that email or whatnot, just please send it to me.
I'll
So
send.
try to
I'll
look
send.
at it.
I know I have. If nothing else, it's in some meeting notes.
Because yes, I only spent about three minutes kind of.
Yeah.
Look,
I'll send it to
pushing
you
that up, so.
through Michael. How's that? Proper channels.
You can send it to both of us at the same time.
I can do that.
Yeah,
I have the power to do that.
that's attorney-client privilege there.
That's right. I have email addresses. Okay, thanks.
We have one more application for review. This one was requested by the applicant. I think I sent you all an email with committee meeting materials that included this. This is Chad Lamacchia. I think I'm saying that right. Mr. Lamacchia's application and education were reviewed by Dr. Smith, and it was denied. His background is in science and got a civil engineering master's and a PE in another state. So he was denied a denied applicant based on deficiencies in his education found by Dr. Smith. Megan Molesky is on virtually, and Megan, do you have anything to add? Megan is the staff member who was working with Mr. Lamacchia.
Hey, it's Megan. Hey guys. So I don't necessarily have anything to add besides Mr. Lamacchia added. He sent in a letter for this discussion. He requested that the board review his application at this meeting. He did provide a letter of explanation. It's the very first page, and then the very last 3 pages are Dr. Smith's evaluation of his education. He states in his letter, just briefly, that he is taking the education to, meet our educational requirements, but he wanted you all to discuss his application, and he sent in a letter for that purpose.
Gentlemen, I would add this. You won't find this on your iPad. This was emailed separately to you as committee materials. This is not included in the full board meeting material. Yes, sir.
Rob, if I can summarize, I'm kind of looking at Dr. Smith's letter if you want me to.
Go ahead.
So the BS is in environmental science, master's in civil, and Dr. Smith's review said that math and basic science is 6 hours deficient, and the engineering, science and engineering design is 25 hours deficient. Said, and he goes on to have some language about how their undergraduate program wasn't part of a college of engineering and the different.
This is another place where I have the question, regardless of how we feel about it, do we have the authority to do anything about it?
I don't think we do.
Who reviewed this applicant? And it's just a letter, okay. hadn't been reviewed yet.
No, this hasn't been. Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, but this has not been sent directly to any one of you for an official review. It was subject to review by Dr. Smith first. Generally speaking, if Dr. Smith finds there to be deficiencies with these applicants, we don't usually send them to you because of that reason. In this case, the applicant asked that the board review and provide further explanation if necessary.
This is Megan. So that's correct, Michael. It wasn't sent for board review. I did notify him of the results of his education evaluation by Dr. Smith, and I let him know that he was found to be not equivalent. And, that typically Dr. Smith will provide a list of courses that would satisfy those deficiencies, but it was so starkly different from our requirements that he couldn't provide a list of courses. And I let him know, that he was deficient and et cetera, and he still asked, even though I told him, you would still need to meet these education requirements, that inevitably the final decision to approve or deny was not with me, it was with you all. So he did encourage me to provide this to you for final determination.
This is Robert. Quick question. Would this be cured, I think, with the new law?
Say that again, Robert.
Would this be cured with the new law?
I don't think so. I think that there's not a qualifying degree, and
he has a master's degree, so it would depend on that matrix.
I see.
You remember, Robert, we talked about with a master's in engineering what the undergraduate with. His undergraduate does seem to be something,
science and resource
management. Something similar to engineering. So it may be that when this one we would have to revise the rules with the details for the master's degree once the legislation's approved. I don't think it's automatic like the previous one.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
And Michael, that is for the next meeting. Probably a to-do, because if this thing gets passed, like Steve just said, we have to probably discuss what those qualifying undergraduate degrees paired with master's degrees look like at some point.
Okay, so are you saying you would like to table this discussion to the next meeting, or would you rather take it up if, let's just say, if the bill passes today, would you rather take it up after the bill becomes effective?
My personal preference is that we table it to discuss until after the bill passes, because I still think we have a little bit of work to do to ensure that undergraduate degree is paired up with the master's degree, or at least have that discussion internally. And I don't know if that has to be a rule or if it has to be a policy or what we have to do to make that work.
Can you make that a motion, Robert?
Can I do that remotely? If I can, yes. I would make a motion that we table this applicant until the current law passes, if and when the current law passes, and after we have discussed the qualifying undergraduate degree that is to be paired with a master's degree.
I would second that, pending review by counsel, who's in deliberation right now. Tony, did you hear Robert's motion?
I heard part of it, yes.
You're the main part.
I heard the part of it, attempting to determine whether or not it could be by rule or policy or whatnot.
That's a viable motion?
That's a viable motion. Most things nowadays have to be by rule unless it's an internal policy as to how the board works, since the legislature changed the definition of what a rule is about 4 years ago.
All right, then I will second the motion.
We have a motion and a second and an approval by legal counsel that it's a legal motion to make. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh wait,
Opposed?
sorry. Because Mr. Campbell is virtual, I was just informed we need to do this roll call style. So I will call the roll for this vote.
Oh, please do.
Okay, Mr. Barrick,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Heathcote,
Yes.
Mr. Bursai,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Aye. Yeah.
Okay, that was the last thing we have here for this committee.
I have
On-
one other thing that I'd like to ask, but go ahead before we adjourn. One other quick thing. Take 1 minute.
Sure about that?
I know that's hard for me.
We're going to give you two. But
And I know my credibility on being able to
yeah,
reach
sir.
that
Go
time.
ahead. Go ahead. I think mine will take just a matter of minutes as well.
For those that are attending the NCAAS Southern Zone Conference, please remind them that having $82 million in unrestricted reserves is unreasonable, and we should put that into action to help do something to benefit our profession.
Thanks,
Will
sir.
do.
well said.
Yeah, I'm not sure that requires comment, but appreciate the announcement. This one will require comment, and maybe a brief discussion. Hopefully it is brief. But so we were petitioned by an applicant who took and passed the PE in Kentucky for a license. Okay. This applicant has not been licensed in any other jurisdiction. So the question is, would this board accept a test score from another state that was taken in another state for, we obviously can't give him a comity application because that's what he asked for initially. So we would then change this to an initial if you all were to accept the exam. There's nothing statutorily that would prohibit us. We've already consulted with legal on this. So there's nothing statutorily that would prohibit this. But the question remains, is there something about the exam in another state that this board has not accepted before?
No, the exam is a national exam. It's prepared and delivered and administered by NCAAS.
Same.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be the exam that kept us from doing that. It would be, we don't have the ability to do that just yet.
Right. Okay, so what I'm hearing then is if this applicant meets all of the requirements necessary for an initial application, that we will grant the application.
And the legislation, well, we the way our law is written right now, you have to graduate from a 4-year accredited university, take and pass the FE, have 4 years of progressive experience post-graduation from an A-BET accredited school, then sit for and pass the exam. And right, that didn't occur in that order.
Right. And some states...
I didn't hear that, though. Are you saying that didn't occur with this applicant?
But Megan has been dealing with this applicant. She's, again...
You can live in Kentucky and work 4 years and then
Well, he's a
apply for
Tennessee
the
resident.
test.
He's a Tennessee resident that tested in Kentucky.
Uh-huh.
Now,
But, I mean, you could work 4 years and take the test in Kentucky after 4 years. So, he might meet our rules.
He
well,
may.
caveat is Kentucky, I believe Kentucky's decoupled, so they allow for testing straight out of college.
They do, but did this person do that?
Ricky's question is, did he take it before he had the requisite 4 years of experience post-graduation?
He might have 8 years of experience.
Well, I don't know that answer.
He or she.
But what I'm asking is if this person meets all the requirements, we'll go through the process. We're not approving.
Oh, yeah.
We're not approving an application here.
If he meets our current laws and rules, then yes, obviously.
Your only question is, can he take the exam in Kentucky?
Will you
Yes.
accept the test?
Yes.
Sure, of course.
Yes.
Just like Missouri or Oklahoma or...
That's it. That's all we've got.
Motion
you.
to adjourn.
So moved.
I would like to know who's going to Oklahoma City for sure. I mean, it's kind of floating in and out.
I believe we had, it was me, Steve, and Ricky and I think originally Rob was on that list, but there's a conflict there.
And
I can't go.
And then
And
we
then Robert.
approved. We approved because they were going to fund 3. NCS was going to fund 3. We approved the other 2. So all of you had the option to go, and should hopefully be registered by now.
wait, I didn't think.
Ricky, I'm going.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
going.
Robert is going, Steve is going, Ricky is going, but that was the 3.
Those were the 3 funded.
Right.
But the state has the ability to fund another.
But yeah, we did that in the last meeting. That,
The way it was left, everybody could go if they wanted to go.
Yes.
Last meeting.
Well, I didn't think I could.
you can always go.
I could pay for it myself, but
Yes.
You could make that $82 million statement yourself if you want to. That's the point.
There's a thought.
I've made that several times before, and in fact served on the finance committee last year and made that point.
I know. It's persistent, so it's
Yeah.
a continuum.
Well, the issue was about the administration of the test, and until they're 100% on computer-based testing, they have to allocate some for in the event of some failure or loss of the test.
Yeah.
And which my advocation was, you can buy insurance for anything in this world, and surely you can buy insurance to cover that
Right.
potential event. But that falls on deaf ears.
Okay. I heard a motion to adjourn. I believe I heard a second.
We're still adjourned. We're just talking, man.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to pause the recording since this meeting is now adjourned, and we're going to move in.
So we're not ready.
We're ready now. You want to call us to order? We'll get going.
I'd like to call the Grants to Higher Education Committee for the Licensing Board on April the 7th, 2022 to order, please. Michael, we need a roll call vote.
Yes, sir. Oh, we need a roll call, that's for sure. Can I get you to turn off Mr. King's microphone? I saw it lighting up. Just want to make sure we avoid any feedback. Yes, so we will call the committee roll. Mr. Heathcote?
I'm here.
Tibbs? Ms. Doss?
Here.
Mr. Bricktaw? Here. Mr. Wagster? All right, Mr. Wagster is not present. Okay, so you all, I believe, received an email with 2 proposed amendments to grants that were previously awarded, one to UTC, one to ETSU. And Mr. Chairman, I'll let you lead the discussion, whichever one you'd like to start off with.
I think if it's okay with everybody, I'll start on the request from UTC. I think if you've had a chance to review their request for modification, they want to transfer funds out of one of their requested line items in their budget to another. The rationale was that they had received 6 total applications for the NCIDQ scholarship. 3 of the applications were for the exam and registration for the IDFX portion, and the other 3 were for the application to the exam only. Therefore, they didn't need the, was it $6,000 and some change that was requested? And it was $6,460. And now with those modifications, the revised grant amount is only $1,425. So they requested that we move the balance, $4,035, to supplies, telephone, postage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And their use of those funds, which they had given us in their description, was to purchase additional drafting packets and 10 marker pen sets to be added to all of the incoming freshman packets, which they felt like would remove some of the financial strain on those. It meets the criteria and the qualifications for grants to colleges, grants to higher education. It seems to be worthwhile. They were able to specify what the use of the funds were going to be. I'll take questions or comments from the committee members. Brian?
Now it's on. Maybe the red light was a dead giveaway. I was just telling someone that was the hardest part when I started, the freshman not having the finances for the supplies. So I matter of fact, I know we have a time for discussion, but I'll make a motion that we approve it. I definitely think that's a worthwhile move over the funds.
I agree. Thank you, Brian. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I think Ben may have beat you to the punch. So we have a motion and a second from Ben. Is there any discussion? There appearing to be no discussion. We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call? Do we need a roll call vote?
All members present. Nobody online.
Frank is not online.
Voice vote is perfectly acceptable in this case.
All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? We have a motion that has been passed. Thank you.
I'll let UTC know. Thank you.
Thank you. The second request is from East Tennessee State. And they had petitioned originally as part of their application for $1,000 for their trip to what they call Studio Rome, taking their students to Rome, which would be followed by an essay. But obviously, I think any normal human being could see the benefits of an interior designer going to Rome. But because of COVID-related events and the war in Ukraine, they are no longer able to do that. So they've petitioned the committee to consider transferring that $1,000 to their design conference. And I've made a few notes just based on my review of what they do at the design conference. But one is it involves recruitment of high school students. Obviously, they're incorporating high school students into the conference. Engaging high school students, professional engagement where they bring practitioners, licensed, or I guess not licensed, but registered interior designers in to speak to and help educate students. And then part of their request was for new technology and equipment. They did not specify what the new technology and equipment was, and normally we would request that they do provide that information. So the recommendation I would have to consider is that we approve this contingent on them giving us information about what the specific technology components that we're going to purchase is. Yes.
If I may, I did receive a responsitory email this morning from Mr. Dean Isham at ETSU. And it says, I'll read it, it's only a couple sentences. The email in whole says, technology fees would be to increase Zoom capabilities and network bandwidth to handle hundreds of participants at one time. ETSU has this as an option for conferences as an upgrade from normal Zoom abilities. So they would be expanding their ability to host larger virtual events.
Okay. Well, obviously that is an eligible item. I would appreciate comments, thoughts from the committee members.
I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? We have a second. Any discussion? There being none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approval of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? We have none. Therefore, Michael, we have an approved motion.
Thanks, sir. I figured it'd be quick. We don't have anything further agendaed for this committee. We were originally planning on having a landscape architect meeting, but we weren't able to get a quorum for that, so a physical quorum. So that's what we now have 40 minutes until the scheduled start of the full board meeting. We happy to entertain a motion to adjourn this committee.
Well, let me ask, is there any other discussion or items to come before the committee before we do that?
I will say that having
There's nothing on the agenda.
Correct. Having not been part of the agenda, there's no action, no further action the committee can take, but discussion can be had.
There being none, do I hear a motion to adjourn? There's a motion to adjourn, taking precedent over all other motions. We are adjourned.
All right. Thank you all. Okay, we are recording, and welcome back to the scheduled 1 p.m. meeting of the Architects and Engineers Board. My apologies to you all. If you're not aware, this was my screw up. In updating the agenda, I failed to update the website, so the reason that we were not able to proceed at 11 was because the proper notice had not been given to the public. And in erring on the side of caution, we decided to go with the posted time as opposed to the agenda time. So,
your offer to buy everybody lunch to atone for your mistake at the next meeting is appreciated.
I'll send you the bill. Yeah. So we can get this, we can call this meeting to order, Mr. Chairman, and then I will move into a quick roll call.
Okay. All right. Welcome to the April 7th meeting of the Board of Architectural and Engineering Examiners. We are called to order. And Michael, if you'll give us a roll call.
Mr. Bursai.
Here.
Mr. Bricktock.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
There we go. Let's see. Mr. Parker.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Here for a little while.
All right. Mr. Campbell is attending virtually. Mr. Barrick.
Here.
Ms. Doss.
Here.
Mr. Tibbs.
Here.
Mr. Wagster is absent today. Mr. Heathcote.
I'm here.
Mr. King.
Here.
All right, Mr. Chairman, we can move further into the agenda.
Okay. Next is the acknowledged guest. I don't think we have any other than the society person that we have out there. So we'll hear about that in a minute.
Stacey Anderson.
Yes.
Okay. And then announcements. I have one.
Okay. Announcement.
It's a big one.
Yes.
You may notice that Maria looks different today. Maria has accepted a job and started on Monday with the comptroller's office. So moving forward, if you have anything that you think might require advice from legal counsel here, until we hear otherwise, we'll be including Tony and Stuart on anything that regarding legal for this board and any other program that Maria was involved in. So, FYI, I don't believe anything has been finalized in terms of assignment-wise how things are going to shake out. But for the time being, Tony Glandorf is the man.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tony. And I think I speak for the board in thanking Maria for her service to the board. She was a great resource and help to the work we do. So she did an excellent job. So thank you to Maria.
I've been in contact with Maria and have extended an invitation to her once she gets settled to, as I said earlier, to Alton. Asked her if she wouldn't mind coming back so we could throw flowers at her feet as she walked into the room. So hopefully she'll be here for the June meeting just to pop in and say hello to everybody, because we got caught in between meetings, and I know you all have plenty to say about Maria and would like for her to be here. So
We'd at least like the opportunity to do that. Yeah, thank you.
we'll bring her here so you can say, no, we're good.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the only major announcement I had. I guess we can.
Any other announcements?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's review the agenda. Anybody have changes or additions to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to, under committees, I suppose, I'd like to just briefly talk about something with CLARB for the Landscape Architecture Committee meeting.
Okay.
If that is that appropriate at that slot or some other time?
We didn't meet, but we could add this under committee reports.
That'd be fine. Yes,
So it's
yes.
non-actionable, but
Exactly.
yeah, okay.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other agenda changes or additions? Okay. Next on the agenda, minutes from the February board meeting. I don't think we were sent the minutes, unless I missed them from the February board meeting. They were not in the package this time.
Folders open. Let me just make sure.
Okay.
You're correct. What we'll do is we'll print some minutes off and have them run down. And then you all can visually inspect them. We can move the approval of previous meetings minutes further down the agenda. And once we get those print-offs, you all can take a minute and review them on site, and we can move from there.
Sounds good.
Okay. Apologies for that.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to professional society reports. See, Nathan Ridley is here too. Casey is here. You want to flip, or Casey's going first?
Mine was shorter.
Good.
Casey Anderson. I'm the executive director of the American Council of Engineering Companies of Tennessee and the Tennessee Society of Professional Engineers. I am virtually missing my brain today, so I will just go through the one thing that y'all have been engaged with us on is the changes to engineering licensure and landscape architecture. The bill that went through, which is House Bill 2627, Senate Bill, I can't remember right now, 2478. So the good news is it passed on the House floor this morning. It passed on the consent calendar of the Senate floor on March the 7th. So it took a full extra month in the House because there was a fiscal note on it. And which I have discussed with some folks. It was a very minuscule fiscal note, but if there's any fiscal note at all, it has to go through 2 extra committees on the House side. So the good news is that it was a very highly supported bill. People thought it was a great idea. During Engineers Day on the Hill, we set out, I think we had 60 something meetings that day with legislators to have actual engineers talking to them about what the bill means and why it's important, and lots of support. We ended up with 10 co-sponsors in the House, which was exciting. And they all had really great things to say about the bill. So super excited that that is off the list. It will go to the governor next. And once he signs it, July 1st is the effective date. That's written into the statute. Sometimes it says immediately upon signature. This one says July 1st. So that's when that will start. I have had 2 folks that I've been talking with who are affected by this bill, who I'm sure you will be hearing from on July the 1st. So they are really excited to have the opportunity to become licensed in this state, and they just haven't been able to in the past. So really appreciate that. Lots and lots of other things going on across the street. We're still, I'm sure Nathan will give a more succinct version of it, but it's been a really busy year on the engineering side, and we've gotten involved in a lot of issues. And I just, for the record, want for anyone who goes back and watches these things, codes are really important. to engineers, and what is in those codes is really important to engineers, and how you all design is often based on those codes, right? And that is essentially the rules that you're following. And so the bills that come through that that dramatically change those codes are things of great interest to us, to make sure that the way that those codes are changed, if they're changed in statute, which really we would prefer they never be changed in statute, but when they are changed in statute, we want to, or proposed changes in statute, we want to make sure that the way that they're being changed is being at least looked at by the people who should be doing that work, so that we can make sure that the health, safety, and welfare of the public is protected. So that's just a soapbox item for anyone who might be viewing this lovely meeting that you're having. So a couple of, but there's a lot going on over there. Everything's been pretty good, and it's been a good year. A couple of exciting events coming up for us. The Show of the South, which is a huge environmental conference, will be in Chattanooga, May the 10th to the 13th. That one is like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. Pretty much everyone in the in this state and some others that come in for environmental work will be there. So that's a great one. May 21st to 25th is ACEC Nationals Legislative Summit. If you are at all a political, into politics, into that kind of world, or pay attention on TV, this is a great conference. Lots of really high level stuff. Clearly will be lots about the economy and infrastructure and all of that. This year we will be doing visits with our congressional delegation May 24th and 25th. So excited to have engineers up there in DC. And then June 21st to 23rd, we are having our first ever ACEC TDOT partnering conference. It'll be 3 days, half day, followed by a full day, followed by a half day. Really excited. They're from the PDH world. I think the way it's falling out now, it will be 14 to 15 PDHs, but it will be, TDOT will be most of the program, and we will be looking at almost everything they're doing over there. So we're really excited. TDOT is really excited. It'll be at the Embassy Suites in Murfreesboro, and I'm looking forward to a really great meeting with them. That might be all I have.
Thank you, Casey. Any questions for Casey? Okay, well, that was great news about the legislation, and a lot of hard work by you and others to explain this over the years that preceded this moment to everybody. So that great news. Thanks, Casey.
Thank you all.
Okay, Nathan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members. I'm Nathan Ridley. I'm here on behalf of the Tennessee chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. April is Landscape Architecture Month. It happens to be the 200th birthday of a Frederick Olmsted, who is the founder of the profession. He designed, his crowning achievement was the design of Central Park. And being a nerdy guy, I was intrigued that more gunpowder was used to create Central Park in New York City than at the Battle of Gettysburg. That's a lot of gunpowder. Anyway, I digress. April the 7th, qualifying deadline for state and federal officials. So that's today at noon. So you'll know the slate of candidates that will run in the August and November elections. May 5th and 6th is the annual Landscape Architect Conference in Knoxville, Tennessee this year. Except for Blair and me, the selection of speakers this year is really good, and it's a good opportunity, just like with all the other professional society conferences, for our members to get their professional development hours. And we encourage them to document that so they won't get in trouble with the folks sitting down here at this table at audit time. So it's just a wonderful event. We didn't have one last year because we had the national conference here in Nashville, so we're pumped to do that in Knoxville this year. Just a little bit about the legislature. They're almost done. They have to pass the appropriations bill. I guess to echo a little bit on what Casey said, codes are a big deal to everybody in this room. They're really important. So just be gentle when you when you ponder those. Also do some work for the Association of Builders and Contractors, ABC, for some of y'all in the know, and they worry about that too. So that it has a lot of ripple effects when you change one of those. But I guess you would say about any part of the law. So anytime you had a legislative initiative that affects the design professionals, communication is that's all I've got. Our legislative friends will shift into election mode as soon as session's over here, probably by the end of this month. Happy to respond to questions.
Questions? Nathan, thank you, and thank you for that gunpowder trivia. That's a good party thing. Okay, why don't we kind of do our housekeeping here? I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at the meeting minutes that Michael gave us. If you need a minute or so, we can take a minute to look at them. Michael, I'm looking at what he distributed. So this has, I guess, the engineering committee meeting, definitions committee meeting, and the outreach committee meeting. I guess I'm not seeing the full board meeting.
There's not, I'm sorry, did we give you the committee meeting minutes and not the full board meeting minutes?
Looks like what I have is committee meeting. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get you.
All right.
We'll do it again. Round
Sometimes
two.
it helps with retention to do things in stages, so that's good.
Well, Mr. Chairman, real quick, just something you can catch, Michael. Well, maybe I don't think I'm anywhere right now, so I think that first part I was supposed to be on, right? This top part here looks like this is the full board at the top, maybe. Just make sure I'm absent. That's all. That's all. Just make sure I'm absent.
Yeah, that might be.
That's the easy way to say it.
It's a good change. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you are. I'm looking at the full board minutes from February 10th, and you are listed as absent.
Okay.
So
thanks.
We'll get that squared away.
Okay, we'll come back to it. All right. Why don't we move to the next agenda item, legal case report. Stuart?
Okay. Number one on the reports, 2022-004681. Complainant hired respondent on 9/8/21 to do a structural evaluation of the roof and trusses in regard to removing a center wall. Respondent spent about 20 minutes at the house and asked for a $600 check. Complainant was in the middle of construction and waiting on a letter to move forward. After waiting for 2 weeks, complainant tried several times to contact respondent. When complainant did reach respondent, they were allegedly told that respondent was not paid and still owed $1,100. On 9/8/21, complainant received a letter about removing a center wall, but it did not describe the roof or trusses. Complainant states that respondent sent out another person to look and stated they needed to pay this person $250. On 9/28/21, complainant states they received a letter about masonry foundation and concrete slab that they feel had nothing to do with the project. On 9/29/21, complainant received a letter and complainant made the adjustments and removed the center wall. Complainant now alleges that the insurance company will not insure the house because they do not have a letter from a structural engineer. Respondent states that they had no contract with complainant. The person that contacted him was the framer for structural inspection. The framer told the complainant to pay his fee of $600, which included inspection, report, and LVL beam design. The letter was emailed to the framer on 9/27/21, but apparently he did not give it to the complainant. Further, respondent states that the framer and the complainant were drinking the day he sent over another person to look at the project. After review, there does not seem to be any issues with the respondent's work product. This was reviewed by board member Stephen King. Mitigating factors are no violations found, and recommendation is to close.
Do we have a motion? Okay.
Accept the recommendation.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Any questions? Discussions? Steve, I see that you reviewed this, and it was kind of it. As I was reading it, I got to admit it took a left turn. I didn't see it going that way, but I guess just the.
I think it was a communication problem
Okay.
that didn't have anything to do with engineering.
Okay.
Everything that Stuart sent me appeared to me that the engineer did appropriate work. It was just that the complainant wasn't the one that hired him and didn't get the information in a timely fashion. That's why I recommended to close.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Okay. Any other questions? All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. And Robert, is Robert on still? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here for a little bit.
Do we need to do a roll call if Robert?
I'm not going to vote. I just was here just in case, just to listen.
Okay,
Because I've got
then we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
Yep.
Robert
Right.
makes our. Yeah.
We'll do roll call votes.
Okay, let's do roll call.
And Robert will have to participate.
All right.
I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. Quite all right. Okay, so we'll just, Mr. Bursai,
Aye.
Mr. Bricktow,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye. Yes.
Oh, there. Okay. Couldn't hear that first one. Let's see. Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Barrick,
Aye.
Ms. Doss, Mr. Tibbs,
Aye.
Mr. Heathcote. Oh, I'm sorry. All right, we've
All right.
we've gone through the voting.
There it is.
There you go.
Okay, the motion passes, Stuart.
It's like we've never done this before. It's like I've never done this before.
It's just so fresh all the time.
What is this? Like, wait a minute.
All right, Stuart.
Number 2 is 2022-005621. An anonymous complaint alleges respondent is using the appellation of architecture in the business name without being registered. Respondent states they have been an architectural designer for 35 years and have never presented themselves as a registered architect. Research shows that respondent is using the appellation of architecture in the business name, and the business name is listed as a residential design service firm. The respondent has not used appellations of professional or registered architect, but instead states that they are the principal residential designer. This was reviewed by board member Frank Waxter. Mitigating factors are there's no history of disciplinary actions. The aggravating factors are using the appellation of architecture in the business name without being registered. The recommendation is to authorize a civil penalty of $500 for using the appellation of architecture in the business name and demand to stop using the appellation.
Thanks, Stuart. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, second.
So moved.
Okay, any discussion? We don't have Frank here to explain his thoughts, but any questions that we can pose? Anybody have any discussion? None? All right, we got a motion and a second. Michael, if we can do a roll call vote.
We can. Mr. Bursai,
Yes.
Mr. Bricktow,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell. Campbell, I believe you're on mute.
Sorry, yes.
Mr. Barrick,
Yes.
Ms. Doss,
Yes.
Mr. Tibbs.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, motion passes.
Number 3, 2022-006711. Complainant alleges the local subdivision code requires a street light at intersections, and the town failed to follow the code by not installing street lights at 2 intersections. Repeated attempts to have the town rectify this safety hazard has been ignored. Complainant alleges the developer bonds have been released after the regulations were not verified. The respondent is the town engineer. Respondent states that unfortunately the preliminary plat for the 2 intersections was approved by the Town Planning Commission in July of 2012 without showing street lighting. The construction documents that accompanied the preliminary plat also did not show these street lights. Since the construction plans did not show the light poles, the developer did not put them in. The final plat for the next phase was approved in September of 2013 does show the streetlight poles, however, they have not been installed. Respondent states the developer bond has not been released after 2 requests. Respondent states he works in an advisory role to the Planning Commission and cannot compel the developer without the Commission's action. It is the intention of the Planning Commission to request the installation of the streetlights before the release of the bonds for the latest phase. So reviewed by Board Member Robert Campbell. Mitigating factors and no violations found. Recommendation is to close.
Okay. Do we have a motion
So moved.
and a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Robert, if you are on, do you want to say anything about this to add to the description?
Yeah, the only thing I'll say, Ricky, is this is, it actually, some of that stuff predated the registrant, so he wasn't even really on board during some of this. And it looked like some of those decisions were made before he got engaged, and they are trying to rectify that. And that's, sometimes the engineer's left out of the loop when it comes to planning commission actions and things that are followed up with. So I didn't see that he had done anything wrong.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Anybody have any other questions or discussion, especially for Robert? Okay, Michael, let's take a roll call vote.
Bursai,
Yes.
Mr. Bricktaw,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Barrick,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Ms. Doss,
Yes.
Mr. Tibbs.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the legal report.
All right, thanks, Stuart. Okay, let's move on to the director's report. Michael?
Not been my best day. You sure you want to do that?
We've all got our seatbelts on here, ready. Who knows?
Who knows?
All right. First thing on the list is the financial data. Let's see. You all should have a somewhat slightly detailed version and also a bigger picture version, the typical reports, NPS and details. So at this point, I just ask if there are any questions regarding those 2 pieces of data that you have. Okay. Hearing none, I will move on to the discussion that I'd like to have about clarification on the seal for stamping. Now, this has come up recently because, as you can see on the seal on the wall behind you, there is a Roman numeral 16 on the seal. The seal that we have in our guidelines, which you received a copy of, does not have the 16 on it. So the point that I'm trying to clarify here is, are we going to accept the seals as they are in the guidelines, or will we accept the ones with the 16 on them, or do we just want to push people to what's here, or do we want to change it? That's what I'm trying to get at. Because it's been brought up that while the official seal has the 16 on it, the seal that we have in our guidelines does not. So that's the question.
Okay, Alton, comment?
The seal that we've got in our guidelines also doesn't have the great seal of the state of Tennessee on it either. So it doesn't. So this seal is different in a number of ways, but it's specifically designed for the seal of professional services firm in the state of Tennessee. So I think it seems apparent and obvious our rules and laws are written around the use of this seal, the one that appears in our laws and rules.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments on this? I've got one since I was actually emailed and kind of asked a question to do a little bit of, I guess, some research on it. And with in our office, I looked at both wall certificates and our stamps that we have, and on the wall certificates, and we've got them dated from the 70s to current, and the wall certificates are the same in that they're different. The top seal on the wall certificate has the 16 on it, but there's a gold crested seal that does not have the 16 on it. So on the wall certificates, you have both kinds. And then on the stamps, it was all over the place. Half of the stamps had 16 that don't match exactly what's in our rules, and half of them did not have the 16 that do match our rules. And my thought is that this question was specifically about the 16, is that we have at least from my research, a 50-year history of having it both ways, with the 16 and without the 16. And my recommendation was, and still is, that we have a 50-year history of accepting that either way, that we continue doing that. That we either have it match what's in our rules, or if it has a 16 there, that's fine too. But that's kind of where I landed on
That's
it.
a motion. I second it.
Okay, Alton?
So we're going to ignore what appears in the laws and rules and accept either one?
I would say that in addition to the way the stamp reads in the rules, that there's people out there with stamps who've had them for decades that have the 16 on them that we would not.
Question about that.
Okay.
Has and I don't know that anybody in this room would have the knowledge of this. Has this changed? Is what appears in our laws and rules changed any time in the last several decades? Do we know that? Was that the stamp that Ricky was referring to previously approved?
I'm not aware of any changes, and I believe that this, this was given to us. This came to us from somebody out in the field, and said, I've seen both. So which is it? Which one is is there one that is not acceptable versus one that is, or are they both acceptable? So that's really where the root of this comes from. That point of clarification on whether or not both are acceptable or just the one. So we're happy to do. I mean, I'm not aware of a change, so I don't know where the disconnect came from. But we can proceed. If you do want to accept both, we may have to make a proposed rule change to add that to be acceptable, because at this point in time, it doesn't appear to me that the one with the 16 is the acceptable stamp.
And do we know if there are other seals besides those two that are out there that we just haven't seen or checked?
I'm not aware of any.
Well, neither are any of us, but again, it's pretty specific what the stamp. And most people send their stamps out to have them made the first time. You know, you send what's in the laws and rules. So, which makes me wonder if previous laws and rules for people that have held these stamps or seals for very long periods of time, if there was an older version somewhere.
I think some of you all might know the answer to that.
We've got some old stamps that don't have 16 on them. And then we've got some old stamps that do have 16 on them. And
yeah, just a second. We have
Stuart has pointed out, we've been listening, kind of pointed out, there is a difference between a stamp seal and the board's seal. There's two different statutes. So I started to hear one of certificate of registration, and then I heard the actual stamp. I just wanted to clarify for the conversation that we're talking about two different things, and you all understand that. That because they're not the same in the design.
yeah, the weird thing is the wall certificate has the seal two different ways on it, with the 16 and without. There's two seals on a wall certificate. And so neither one of those is a stamp, and they're different.
There is a section in the laws and rules about the seal, though.
Bylaws have, for the board seal, there's no 16 on it in the bylaws.
What about the other section in the laws and rules that show the seal? Does it show a 16 on it?
No, and it doesn't have the entirety. It's just the inner. It does not. In the rules, right? For the actual.
For the use and application of the seal.
That's correct. It's not. It doesn't have the 16 on there. It has the agriculture, commerce, and then there's a variety of different information between. It doesn't say Great Seal of Tennessee.
And my concern is regarding specifically the 16, that I think the stamps, there are a lot of stamps out there both ways and that have been that way for a long time, and just reaching people to have their stamps changed, remade because of the 16. I felt like there was a precedence set. It's not in the rules specifically, but if the precedence has been set to accept the stamp with the 16, that we continue to do that unless that's legally some problem. That just by our actions, we've said that that's okay.
Well, Tony's point, I think unless I'm misunderstanding something, we're talking about apples and oranges. I think it seems that the board's concerned about the architect stamp or the landscape architect stamp, not the board seal. In our rules, it shows what the stamp looks like that says registered engineer, registered architect, registered landscape architect. Is that what you're concerned about?
What I'm saying, I'm talking about the stamp that you would
put
on a drawing. It's
totally different.
It's two,
but it's
right.
But it's in our rules.
All I'm talking about is the 16. That half of them have the 16 and half of them don't. That's. I'm not talking about the wording on the outer edge. I'm just talking about the 16 appears on some stamps that people are using on drawings and have used for decades, and some don't.
In the current rule, the 16's not on it.
Correct. And what I'm, I guess,
But your point is,
what I'm proposing or recommending, and I can make it a motion, is that we are willing to accept a stamp that has a 16 on it because of our history of doing that.
That's a motion. I accept that one too. And second it. Just for what it's worth, I've registered in 17, 18 states. I've seen stamps changed. We have stamped mechanical and electrical drawings where one guy's stamp looked like X and one guy's stamp looked like Y, but they were all acceptable. I am aware of one state, and it may have been the District of Columbia, that actually changed their stamp and made everybody else change it, which I thought was ridiculous. Now, if we want to do this, I'd like to get into. Can we wait 2 months so I can get into that business? And but I again would second your motion that we accept both.
That specifically is about the 16, is what the motion is, that we accept the Roman numeral 16 on a stamp, as well as not a 16 as it appears in our rules. Ben.
16th State of the Union.
All right, any other? No, Rick, I'm sorry.
I was just going to support what you said, that, and be quite honest with you, when I don't know if mine has a 16 on it or not. So, I mean, I've been using the same seal for 37 years. So whatever I've got works for me. So, so I think obviously if we're accepting both, we've got the bases covered. And if you're a new registrant, you will get one of these made that's in the handbook or the law and rules. So, and I do, Rob, I have been licensed in other states where they changed their seal, but they put it in their law and rules that it would take effect on July the 1st of whatever. So I think it's just a lot of confusion if we just leave it like it is, unless the legal has a problem with that. So I second the second. So.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, well, we do have a garbled motion and a second to second. Why don't we could have a roll call vote, Michael?
Mr. Bursey.
Yes.
Mr. Bricktaw.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
All right. Mr. Barrick.
Yes.
Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Mr. Tibbs.
Yes.
Ms. Dobbs. Or Doss.
Yes.
Okay. Have Robert on that?
Mr. Campbell. Is he not on anymore? No, he's not on anymore.
Okay.
So now,
okay. So motion passes. All right. Motion passes. Okay, Michael, you can continue with your director's report after you cause that excitement.
I just needed clarification. You all caused the excitement.
I understand.
Let's see. Other couple things I have are upcoming meeting reminders for NCARB and NCEES. I believe that we're taken care of with the upcoming NCEES meeting in Oklahoma City. However, I would like to make sure that we have approved attendance for the NCARB national meeting, which is in Austin in June, and the NCEES annual meeting, which is in August, and that is in Carlsbad. Those are the two that I have information for. Are there any others that I'm missing that maybe need discussion? Oh, and CLARB in September in Omaha. Sorry, I do have info for that. So, in the case with NCES, I believe that we've established that NCES will fund, usually it's 2 funded delegates plus the MBE. And then
I really think it's 3 funded delegates.
The last couple meetings have only been 2, but the last couple meetings have they've been virtual. I've never attended an NCES meeting in person. This will be my first coming up in Oklahoma City. So
I think I looked at the information they sent out recently, and I think it's 3 funded plus the MBA.
We'll go with 3. And if anything's different, then we'll fix that.
Okay.
Okay. So for the NCES annual, do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to do that next month at the committee meeting?
Probably ought to talk about it at the committee meeting next month. Yeah.
Because we have time. That one's not until
August.
August.
End of August.
And have we established NCARB attendance for the Austin meeting? To looking at the architects.
I plan to go.
Okay.
I think we all 3 are planning to go.
Okay.
With you and legal, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
We want to vote on these individually, Michael, or all together? What do we?
Well, I want to say that we've already taken care of the NCARB.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page with that, and that since it's coming up, we would have already filed the travel authorizations for that. With the NCES, we'll handle that one at the next board meeting, since it will be taken up by the committee in June, and that'll give us ample time to get all that paperwork in as well. It'll give us the month of June, the month of July. And heck, they may not even have registration open by the time we meet next time.
Right.
And then for CLARB, that'll be in September in Omaha. And I would assume that it would just be me and Mr. Parker and potentially board attorney if necessary.
Okay.
So we could probably go ahead, since he's the only landscape architect, we could probably go ahead and take care of that now if you wanted to, or we could wait until the next meeting also.
We can take care of it now if we want to. I think if we've got.
Sorry.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and take care of it now?
Okay.
That'd be fine.
All right.
So does somebody want to make a motion here?
That appropriate for me to make the motion?
Most appropriate.
That we would send myself, Michael, and potentially someone from legal to the CLARB meeting scheduled for later this year in September in Omaha, Nebraska.
Second that motion.
Second. All right, any discussion? All right, why don't we have a roll call vote, Michael? Drop off.
Since Mr. Campbell is no longer part of the meeting, we can do a voice vote.
All right, we will have a voice vote for that motion in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, let me see here. Newsletter submissions. I believe people were going to be coming back to this meeting with articles in hand to submit. I have received one from Mr. Bursai. I know Mr. Parker's is close.
Yes, it's close, but it's not complete.
Not here. It's close.
Not
It's
here.
Okay. I would like to submit all of those in one document to make sure that, one, they stay together, and two, I think it will be much easier to move them en masse as opposed to individually. So if we don't have anything to be turned in today, I believe you all can email those to me as they're ready to save us some time. The outreach committee has already discussed assignments. So I feel like we're in a good spot there. However, if we're going to have something ready for the June meeting as planned, then I'm going to need to start getting those through the process of approval via legal and then through our comms folks as well. So the sooner you can get those in to me, the better.
The timeline is if they can get reviewed, whatever edits are made, so that we could vote on. Do we need to vote on them in June as going in a newsletter, or what?
Yeah.
What
So
happens?
we were targeting August, I think, right?
Yeah,
Is that
August
right?
is when we were talking about.
So we were targeting August, which means that if I can have all the submissions now, mind you, I think the plan was to only go with one feature article at a time, right? So, but we can do all four, one from each profession if you wanted to. But the timeline that we had previously discussed was to have everything submitted in so that we could start the design process by June and vote at the August meeting on the final product. And you guys would either give a thumbs up or come back with changes at the August meeting. And if you gave the thumbs up, it would be ready to go and it would go out the next day. If you wanted to change it, we'd go through, we'd make the changes, and then those changes would then, make it go out a couple days later. But the goal was the August meeting.
One thing I'll mention, I don't know how this fits in. The article I wrote is not strictly an engineering article. It was meant to be more of a board chair article. So it's got a little paragraph just on what we've been doing. So it has definitions in there which affect all of us. And it's got the grants program in there that's all of disciplines. It also has just some general information about board rolling off and coming on, new members, what's happened. And then it's got about our legislation, which is engineering. So I could, however you want to put that together in a newsletter, however that fits. If there are any other articles about specific disciplines, I think they could go in there too. They don't need to cover grants or definitions, I guess, or
Sure, they could be industry specific.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I would encourage that they be industry specific.
Yeah.
The general sort of, I think it's customary for most newsletters for a chairman to have kind of a general article or a general piece, kind of an update, and then a couple of industry specific items as well.
Exactly. That's what I intended that to be, just the general.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I at the risk of sounding like some sort of a professor, hope to see those in the next week or so.
Give them a hard date, Mike.
Why is he looking over here?
Give them a hard date.
The sooner the better. Let's just say that. So,
Who is? I may miss a lot. So Blair's going to do an article on landscape. Who else is going to?
Well, Blair and Melanie were
Melanie's gonna do
the automatics.
Okay.
And I think Rick, had you said that you would do something, or are we going to hang that on Frank since he's not here?
I believe that was Frank's.
Michael, you probably should send an email to Frank.
I'll remind Frank.
And since he's not here.
And I'll go back and check the minutes. If I find out it was Rick, I'll make sure he has to get it in by Friday of this week.
Okay.
Michael, I think the situation was that Frank and I were going to write one together. And
Okay.
so so Frank isn't on the hook, I don't think, for one, since I will write one specific to the interior design profession.
That's fine. It doesn't, we can do this however you all want. We can even save some of these. If some of these are pieces that can be used at later times, we can kind of keep a bank of things depending on how general they are. Obviously, the more specific they are, the more timely they may be. But we can start to create a bank of these articles. So even in the future, if we go through another pandemic or something that limits things, we can have these on file and just keep it going. So, okay, we won't get on Frank this time. All right.
Okay.
That's it for me. We can, unless you all have any questions for me, we can move into the committee reports.
Anybody have any questions, Michael? You're afraid to ask him? Is that what you're saying? I'm just kidding, Michael. Okay, let's move into committee reports. Engineer committee. Rob?
Engineers committee met this morning. We reviewed 2 applicants and had a full and lively discussion about what we were able to accept and not able to accept. We accepted one and accepted the other, and contingent upon the legislature passing a rules and law change that we learned about an hour later got changed or got accepted. And we talked about who was going to go to the upcoming conference, and we adjourned.
If I could add one thing, just a point of clarification on that meeting. After we discussed the out-of-state testing question, upon further review, a rule was cited that says, and I'll read this to you, this is rule number 0120-10-.04, parenthetical 4. An individual who was previously registered in another jurisdiction but whose registration has expired may apply in Tennessee as a new exam applicant. The board shall decide on a case-by-case basis if it shall accept exams passed in another jurisdiction. Now, what this says to me, and I believe that we're in a consensus here, is that since the gentleman in question has never been licensed before in any other state, his out-of-state exam he doesn't meet the qualifications set forth in the rules. So he will have to apply in Kentucky to receive a license there before we can license him here.
Okay.
Okay. That was that point of clarification for that meeting.
You feel good about it? I do too.
Okay. Grants to Higher Education Committee.
I'm happy to relay that to you without having stepped away for the duration of the meeting. The Grants to Higher Education Committee had a brief meeting. There were 2 proposed amendments to grants that were authorized for the University of Tennessee Chattanooga and East Tennessee State University. Both had asked to amend their proposals to reflect changes due to COVID. One involved they both involve trips of sorts being changed, and in the
one was supplies.
One was for supplies,
yeah,
and the other one was for additional technology capabilities or technological capabilities. Both of those were approved by the committee. So I guess the recommendation of the committee would be that the full board accept these amendments as proposed, in which case I will notify the schools that they have been accepted, as well as the contracts team, because those contracts will have to officially be amended and re-signed.
Somebody understand that closely enough to make a motion?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Make a motion. Do I just say approve make a motion?
I believe a motion.
I'll make to approve both amendments.
Yes.
Okay. I make a motion to approve both amendments to ETSU and UT, University of Tennessee Chattanooga.
Okay. All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Melanie. All right. Any other questions, discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
It's made 2 schools very happy.
Good.
Let's see. One last item, old business.
But before we leave committee reports, we wanted to add landscape architects.
That's right. Correct.
Committee reports.
Yes.
Before, I just want, do you need to? Okay. All right.
Thank you. Quickly, CLARB has, do we have, we're not going to need to vote
We're good.
for me.
We're good. We still have 6.
Okay. CLARB has set up a uniform license standard. And what this is, in essence, much like a standard definition of landscape architecture, they are now coming up with sort of their recommendations on to have for each state to have a uniform license standard. That's not to say that state of Tennessee will abide by that, but the point here is that they're taking a vote on April the 20th, just a week and so away. The Landscape Architecture Committee has not met to discuss this, and there's been very little discussion of this, and so we will hold off and have this discussion later, but we will not be voting on the CLARB vote on April the 5th or April the 20th. So just to let everybody know that this is going on. And since we did not have our LA committee meeting, I wanted to get that out with the overall board and just introduce that to you. So that's all.
Okay. Does. Thanks, Blair. Michael, I wonder, before we get to old business, I see Ashley Cates in here, and I didn't know, Ashley, if you wanted to give a society report.
I also might add that Ashley is the only person who offered these suggested changes to the definitions, so she may just want to stay at the podium when she's done with the society report.
Okay.
Ashley Cates, Executive Vice President of AIE Tennessee. Right now, we are just watching session. We're excited about the amount of funding that has been included in the administration's budget for projects. So we're gearing our architects up for work that's going to be coming down the pipeline, getting ready for that. We have our conference in Chattanooga this year, August 10th through the 12th. We're going to have some public engagement pieces that go in that piece, and we'll be working also as far as making sure education is available across the state. For this year, we have probably about, I think we provide close to, if not over, 18 hours of learning units, and 12 of those are HSW. So through the state component and or local components, our members should have access to continuing education for this year. And then lastly, the National Association of Minority Architects, they're having their national conference in Nashville this year. It's in October. And so if you all want to put that on your calendar, I don't know if anyone had given you those dates. So we're excited to host them in Nashville. That's it. Pretty short report today.
Thanks, Ashley. Anybody have questions for Ashley? Okay, so you've been commanded to stay at the podium. If you could. Okay. All right, Michael, now, old business. Old business definitions.
Yeah.
Is that, do you want to take that, or is that?
Well, the committees had already put out definitions, in which case Ashley had AIA had offered suggestions for. So I just wanted to have a discussion around those suggested changes.
Okay, and these are suggested changes to definition of architecture, or is it more involved?
No, they submitted for all.
For every discipline.
Yeah, but would you classify them as mostly?
So staff just asked for feedback, if we wanted to have feedback before the process, and so offered a small group of working architects to take a look at it, just fresh eyes. And they came back. I mean, it was just, I pulled together a memo. This is strictly feedback. So when you ask architects or anyone for some feedback, you might get it. So I have an outline. I don't know particularly what you all have in front of you, but I have a memorandum that kind of talks about the change and the reasoning behind the change. And they're fairly simple. If you want to go through them, or I wasn't sure the process.
I have a printout of your memo specifically on its way down right now. So I think you can talk generally if you like, and then once we get those down here, that you can get more into the specifics if you like.
Sure. I mean, if you go through it, I mean, well, one, it states, the memorandum just states that our position aligns with AIA Nationals, which supports the NCARB's definition for architecture. And then it goes into, we reviewed each definition. On the first part, and I hit architecture first, section 1B, it's the second sentence, we suggested adding may for considerations for developing concepts may include, but are not limited to the following. And it's a minor change. It is suggested because not all items listed pertain to every project. Sorry, something keeps popping up on that email. For example, a shell or a core project may not involve interior space planning. So that was suggestion to 1B. It was suggested to maybe possibly take the list of items and add them as maybe a supplemental guideline supporting examples. So it's not so much in the rules as it is something that can be tweaked without having to go within the rules and change it. 1C, second sentence, add may. The documents prepared may include, but are not limited to the following. It's a minor change and suggested because not all items listed pertain to every project. For example, interior renovation project may not involve site work. Section 1C was again, consider making the sentence and list as part of a supplemental guidelines and supporting examples. Section 1C2 is delete for all aspects. So the sentence would say preparing working drawings and specifications of a building, shell, and interior. And the reasoning behind this is for all aspects would include such items such as shop drawings and submittals, which architects do not prepare. And then section 2, they just offered to move this section and consider it as part of a list or supplemental guidelines for supporting examples. That the list does not, this list does not add to the definition of the practice of architecture. It provides examples and tasks that are not included in the practice of architecture, and such is better suited as a supplemental guideline for reference. So those are the suggestions for architecture, the definition. And then the feedback of landscape, section 1A, and I believe at the committee at some point, Blair, I think you all had talked about this. Regional planning seems to conflict with section 2B. This is just a conflict of wording. 1A states, the practice of landscape architecture renders professional services of regional planning, and 1B states it does not. This just needs clarification. And then recommended moving the list that was underneath there as I'll say supplemental and supporting examples. Practice of interior design. Section 1, they just suggested deleting either distinct or specialized. Interior design is a distinct profession with specialized knowledge. The reasoning distinct and specialized together in context applies to the practice of architecture as well. Distinct implies is recognizably different from something of a similar type. 2B, to add non-structural before alteration, non-structural alteration projects. And the reasoning was adding non-structural clarifies the alteration does not pertain to structural modifications. Section 2D, add finished before materials, specification and documentation of finished materials, finishes and furnishings. Adding finish clarifies the type of materials interior designers document and specify. And then this is a structural thing, just section 3, consider moving this section under registered interior design. It's just a suggestion as it pertains to the definition. And then section 4 of interior design, at the end of the sentence, it says standards, regulations, and guidelines for the purpose of obtaining a building permit as allowed by law, and they struck of obtaining a building permit as allowed by law and protecting the health, safety, welfare of the public, since that's the basis of building permits. Lastly, engineering. Section 2, 10 to delete or. If you look at the last sentence, it says, is work which the licensee is fully qualified to provide on the basis of education, examination, and / or experience. They just suggested deleting or experience. And they just, that initial first revisions that we first submitted to the definitions committee, a lot of that was just suggestions of restructuring it to make it consistent amongst all the definitions and easily readable and comparable. We appreciate the opportunity to provide these. Strictly, it's feedback and suggestions and having another set of eyes looking at it, and happy to answer any questions. But hopefully this memo will help you see where they're coming from, since I'm not an architect.
Right. So that's it sounded like some very good suggestions and things worth considering. I will say that I don't think that I can sit here at this meeting and kind of take all these in and know whether I agree or not agree. I'm sure I'll agree with some and maybe not others, but we've been working on the definitions for, I don't know, 4 years or so. My suggestion is that we have a chance to look at these out after this meeting.
Do you want to refer them back to the definitions committee? Or
Yeah, that's probably a good start. But you know, the definitions came out of the engineering committee came up with the engineering definition that then moved to the definition committee. And I think any changes at this point needs to go back to the engineering committee, and maybe similar for the architects, the comments on architects and landscape. But let me listen to other people. Rick.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for responding, since we're the only ones that responded. These are suggestions. We don't have any problem with the architectural comments. So we don't want to delay this any more than necessary. We don't want to delay it at all. If you don't agree that you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings, okay? So the purpose is not to send this back to step one, because we'll never get this done.
Right.
And I don't think this is a debate. We are not prepared to debate this in terms of, well, if you don't do that, you might want to do this. That's not the intent. These are strictly observations provided by the AIA from an architect's perspective, which of course everyone knows is the right perspective, right? Okay. But truly, this is not meant to throw a wrench into anything. The offer was made and the AIA responded. We don't have a problem with what they're suggesting to the architectural definition. So, I mean, from our perspective, it's fine. But if yours, it is, there's no damage done, no foul. It's just suggestions only. So I want to make sure that we understand that we're not trying to cloud the water any more than it's been clouded for 4 years.
Right.
So, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Blair?
As chairman of the definitions committee, as I remember where we were, I thought that last we met, we had gone through some of these, and actually AIA's comments were, we paid attention to them and discussed them and what have you. But in the end, I think there were some inconsistencies that Maria had pulled together looking at the various definitions, and the thought was this was going back to legal to have them make each of these a little more concise and the language be more consistent with one another, because there's some overlap, or we're saying the same thing in each one that's not necessarily necessary. So that was what I remember from the definitions committee. I will say, the sooner we do this, I'm game. We're not going to slow it. So.
Yeah, so last meeting I sat when Maria was out, and so I took notes, and then Maria has made those changes. But as I understood it, that we had not actually discussed the AIA comments, and we were going to do that now to see what the thought of the members were, because I think it was kind of too much in one day that we were trying to review. So I have these suggestions now, and I can incorporate those into the document that Maria. He went back with with the comments and the changes that were made. So, so we can incorporate these into. I'll just incorporate these into that, and let you all see what that looks like. These comments. What you wanted? I will take the suggested changes. From
no, I understand your question. I'm trying to think of how to answer it.
I can give it to you all both ways too.
I think both ways might be good, and that way it gives us that opportunity to talk about it.
Not many changes.
Okay. Good.
Part of my feelings is that we've worked on the engineering definition as a committee, and I wouldn't want to approve these changes without Robert and Alton weighing in on to the engineering definition. So I don't know where that leaves us. Whether if somebody's making a motion to approve, I would ask that we not take that step at this point until the rest of the board can look at this.
I'm looking at what we were handed.
Yeah.
I don't see that there are any suggested changes to the engineering definition.
There are a couple.
It's the last page.
Couple of changes. The last section there.
How would I know that I don't see anything highlighted?
There's a bold, the AIA letterhead. It's got an architecture definition comments, then a landscape architecture.
Bingo. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The other documents had highlighted changes, and
I see.
I didn't see anything back there. My miss. Thank you.
I know we want to get this done. We've been working on it, but I just feel with a couple of engineers missing, I think everybody ought to have a look at this before it goes out.
Okay. If you want to table these,
if I can table the
so
issue.
well, let me ask you this. Rather than do that, why don't I think you as chairman, you can direct that these be sent for review to the respective committees. And if you want to direct that, then we can either send it back to all four of the professional committees, with the exception of, it sounds like the architects are okay. So they wouldn't require a meeting on this topic. Melanie and Blair, I believe, they could potentially make those decisions as well, but we can refer them back to those professional committees if that's what you want to do.
I think we need to do that just based on our attendance today, that we need to do that. I don't know if it's enough of a change. As you said, Maria reviewed this to pull it together, try to make it consistent, get the language more legally correct or acceptable. When these changes are made, will that then need another legal review to see if that's still so?
Yep.
So I think the order is let our committees get a look at it and weigh in, and then let legal review it again just to see if it needs anything.
I will say this also, in the interest of the full list of options, you don't have to accept any of these proposed changes either. So if that's the case and you get into it and you say that you want to move forward with definitions as submitted without change,
right?
I don't believe there would be a review required for those because those have already been reviewed.
Correct. That makes sense. I was really just saying that out of respect for what Rick said, that if the architects feel like the changes are good and you want to make those, that's fine. I just think then it would have to take that step again, which is just fine. I mean, one thing, if we've been working on it 3 or 4 years, we want it to go out, but we also don't want it coming back in. We need to do it. And we understand that in our business. Brian.
I think Steve.
Steve.
I recall that Maria was going to draft some incidental practice language that was going to be applied to each definition that I don't think's been done yet, or I haven't seen it if it has.
Okay.
I think as part of that, I think we need to be cognizant that within your board, you can do that. If you're talking about incidental practice from another profession, that may be difficult. Land surveyors is the biggest one.
We're talking about within this board.
Within architects and engineers and whatnot. Yeah,
yes.
Great. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. I don't know how we get that done, though, I guess, without Maria.
You just get,
Yeah, I was just saying, if there any way maybe to circumvent this, they've heard me saying 4 more years. I mean, because I don't want us to go all the way back to the beginning with this. The committee, we do have the definitions committee. Could they not maybe just like give their recommendation back to the engineering committee, like so that it doesn't have to go back? Because we're like this is going back to step 1, and I don't think that's the intent of their comments at all. It's really it's almost I mean, I don't want to say grammar, but it's almost that type of things to start all over. So that's why maybe the just can go first, just after legal does the dual thing that they were going to do, then the definition committee just say, I think the engineering committee needs to look at this again, or I think we don't think so, and then that way it can just move a little bit forward. I'm only just saying this in just a matter of there's been so much work put into it. I hate for it to go back just because somebody put A and A as opposed to an or something.
I can promise you it's not starting over. Because it would do what Michael said before it started over. It would stay as is because there's been too much work. Rob?
Just a point of clarification that I'm afraid I think I know the answer to. We can't, as an engineering committee, look at these two ands and mays without having a public meeting to say yes or no.
That's correct.
That's correct? Well, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Blair.
Would it be possible for the definitions that have been massaged since last we met to be sent out to the definitions committee so that when we come back together next time, we are fully informed as to how those definitions have been massaged legally?
Are you talking about what Maria has already done?
That's correct.
I think
that we have not seen.
I thought we saw those. I thought we got a copy of that last meeting of what she had already.
There was last meeting was initial cleanup by Maria,
Yeah.
and then we received the public comment, and that's what this is.
I think we have that, Blair.
I can definitely give you the old, the versions that were dealt with at the last meeting.
In fact, I have. I just printed out the engineering definition that we finished with, which was version 7.0A, because it included something Steve had thought of, and then Maria reformatted in December. We received that in December, her reformatting and review. So that's happened, at least with the engineering definition. I don't necessarily have the other definitions in hand. Rob? No, you did left over.
Yeah.
Okay.
I forgot to knock it over.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, they're easy to knock over. I don't think we're starting over. I just think we're cleaning up. We've been given a new piece of good, probably a lot of good edit suggestions. I think it wouldn't be right to have people not at least be able to look at those. Now, I don't see it starting over. I see it. Let's not fall down at the 1 yard line and not score. I hate the sports analogy, but couldn't help it. Okay, well, Michael, if we proceed with getting these to people to review, I think that's the key, is what Ashley's provided with the AIA review. We need to get that to our board members to review, as we all have the definitions as they are written now, and we just need to, I think, look at it between now and the next meeting.
Full board, definitions committee, or professional committees.
I think, well, I know the engineering committee. I mean, we can request that. I'll request at least the engineering committee meeting. The engineering committee would get these to review.
Okay.
I don't know if the other committees need.
Any other professional committee chairs present wish to review these in a professional committee meeting? I believe that'd be Ms. Doss, Mr. Tibbs. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
You guys are good? Okay. And then Mr. Barrick, well, no, you're the engineering committee chair, so that one's been established.
I think the interior design definition was in a state of flux at the last meeting, and we have not seen the most current version that the AIA comments relate to, because I think we were still massaging our definition at the last meeting. So I would appreciate it if we could see Maria's legal's version, so I can compare with AIA's comments.
Last one would be landscape architect.
Yes, yeah, the LA committee needs to meet on this.
Okay. All right.
Yes, Rick.
Your comment, does that mean that your definition is not complete enough to submit, or are we, because that's just going to be more time? Maybe I misunderstood you.
No, we did not, as an interiors committee, or even in the definitions committee, see Maria's most current version. We didn't see her modifications. She had submitted some modifications of the interior design definition, but it wasn't the final submittal. We were one of the last ones. We kept on making some adjustments. So we were one of the last professions to finalize our definition. And I don't recall seeing.
But the definition that we're referring to now, though, that's your last definition, minus any changes that are suggested.
Yes.
I'm reading.
Yes.
I'm reading the most current definition.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Michael, maybe in doing what we're doing, each committee needs to see Maria's cleaned up version to make sure we're all looking at really the last definition that exists is Maria's cleanup.
We'll get you a clean version.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if Maria's name will be on it or not,
That's
but
not.
yeah.
Okay.
It'll be my name that has it on. I have Maria's and Ms. Doss. I think last meeting you and I sat down and we added 2 items to the bottom of interior designers, and I have that. Yeah, I just want you all to feel confident that the changes that we made last meeting, we've got those incorporated. I will send those out to you all to review.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Rob?
Yeah, I want to pile on in support of Rick's feelings on this. Is there a way that that the next time we meet, the committees can review these changes? It can get to the definitions committee so that they can make a recommendation to the full board to accept them, and we can do that in one meeting, because otherwise I see this taking another 3 meetings.
We can schedule all of the professional committees to meet prior to the definitions committee. This will be, we'll go back to a 2-day.
That's what I'm getting to.
We'll go back to a 2-day format.
Beginning with the end in mind.
Yeah, we could schedule.
Can we get this done in the order so that we can get it to the board for approval in one meeting? That's my question.
Yeah, we can schedule these professional committees to meet on the Wednesday, and the definitions committee can meet Thursday morning prior to the start of the full board meeting.
Right, or we can do it all on Thursday, but let's just get it in the right order.
I mean,
so
that's,
we can get it done.
No, that sounds.
If this, I mean, scheduling errors and things aside, I mean, if we want to keep doing this full 1-day thing, I'm okay with that. I prefer it actually to just knock it all out in one fell swoop. So we can do that. We can schedule the professional committees in the morning and have the definitions committee lead off the agenda in the afternoon, followed by the full board meeting.
I'll do it either way. To me, I think if we want to knock it out, I think it'd be better as a 2-day meeting so that we get it done. We have more of a chance to get it done if we're not squeezed in.
Or not wanting to speak for the definitions committee, but under the kind of Department of Redundancy department, the definitions committee could say if the other committees are good and we're not making anything other than these changes here, the definitions committee is good to go, and we can because we'll get together and basically bless what's already been done.
One thing is, just from the sounds of it, the AIA review comments are not all that has to be done. I heard Steve say, we've got some other work to do on incidental practice, and I don't know whose bailiwick is that in now to write. Was that going to be Maria? So that's something none of us have seen yet. What she was maybe thinking of doing. And then Melanie mentioned some changes that are, again, not just AIA. So again, I'm not trying to puff this up, but it doesn't seem like it's at a state yet where it's ready to rubber stamp.
I may be getting out in front of it, but spirit of getting it done.
And I appreciate that. I'm in the spirit of let's not get it done and then have to change it.
Yeah.
Let's get it right. And that's there's not a deadline here. But I appreciate to get it done. I just think we need to be careful with what we're talking about. So I don't know if the way to get that done would, if we're going to come together at the next meeting and try to knock it all out. Well, I definitely think, Michael, that the things need to be emailed to the committee members between now and then to give people time to look at it. Yes, Steve.
I'm kind of in between both of you physically and, but I think we can get it done. I think we can resolve any issue with engineering definition. The thing that I'd like to see is the overlap of our practices, the incidental practice language. And I would think that's going to be very similar for each one. And if Tony or whomever gets that,
I've got half the language written already. Montana has a pretty good one I'm looking at right now.
Okay. So I think it's doable.
I'll give at least suggested language as somebody else.
I think it's doable next meeting.
Can we get some suggested language sent to us on incidental practice between now and then?
Tony's ready to do it, almost right now.
It'll be included with the next meeting material.
Okay. Well,
unless are you asking for it next week?
I think next week or two, or at least give us 2 or 3 weeks prior to the meeting to review it and work with it. That way we come to our committee meetings ready with comments.
We'll get them to you as soon as they're ready.
Okay. And Melanie, will that be a way to? Okay.
That would be good.
Okay. All right. So that's our plan. Let's get it done next meeting, June meeting.
Okay.
Rob, is that okay? Rick, we give it till June?
As soon as possible, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your patience. Okay, any other comments on definitions? Okay, let's see where we are. I know we've got to circle back. We have to circle back and review the meeting minutes from the February board meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look at that?
Feels like months ago.
It does, doesn't it? 2 months ago. Do I have a motion to approve the February minutes that were distributed?
Moved.
All right, we have a motion.
Second.
Second. All right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that passes.
Before you entertain the most important motion, I just want to make one quick announcement. Some of you may have already received emails from Alexandria Griffey. She joined our staff last week. So 2 Mondays ago is when she came on board. She's going to be working in the A&E area of our team. Landscape architects and interior design to start off. So you may be receiving emails from Alexandria Griffey or Alex Griffey. So I just want to make you aware of that.
Okay, thanks, Michael. All right. Anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second? All right. We don't think we need a vote for that. We are adjourned.
Nice job.